It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, right on our front lawn. A loaded gun pointed at my son, all because of a bird feeder. And Karen? She stood proudly behind him, holding her clipboard like it was a crown, wearing that sour, smug look she always wore when she thought she was winning. Red Maple Grove wasn't supposed to be like this. This neighborhood was built for potlucks, lawn awards, and friendly waves from porches. Instead, it turned into Karen's personal kingdom, where every blade of grass was judged, every mailbox inspected, and every neighbor ranked like livestock. Karen wasn't just the HOA president. She ruled it like a dictator in pastel capris. And her enforcer? Her boyfriend Randy, a part-time sheriff's deputy with a badge he wore like a weapon. They bullied the quiet ones first. The families too busy to fight back. They thought we were the same. They didn't realize Jason wasn't ordinary. Jason, my son, wasn't just another polite face mowing our lawn every Sunday. He was military trained. Special forces. Built for pressure, calm under fire, and smarter than either of them could imagine. The moment Randy drew his weapon, their fate was sealed. When we moved into Red Maple Grove, it was supposed to be the final chapter of a long, hard-working life. Quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, bird feeders swaying gently in the breeze. Nobody told us the biggest threat wasn't crime. It was the HOA. Karen started small. Warning letters about our flagpole being half an inch too tall. Notes about unauthorized decorations on our porch. We laughed at first. Who fights over a gnome and a flag? But the laughter stopped when the fines started. $75 here, $200 there. Each for violations that seemed to exist only in Karen's head. She rewrote the rules, shut down elections, and silenced anyone who dared question her authority. Her clipboard wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon. Then came Randy. No official title, but always lurking, cruising the cul-de-sacs, knocking on doors with his badge on full display. Neighbors either smiled nervously or started installing cameras. When Jason came back home, respectful, steady, quiet, Karen took one look and decided he was a problem. She said his truck didn't meet community specs. She said our American flag was too aggressive. She said his presence made people uncomfortable. We ignored her until we couldn't anymore. The day it all exploded, Jason was hanging a bird feeder for me under the old oak. Karen stormed up the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, Randy 2 steps behind, his mirrored sunglasses flashing. She barked about some nonsense violation, unauthorized wildlife attraction or whatever code she had just invented. Jason turned, birdseed in hand, and asked calmly, "Really? Over a bird feeder?" That's when Randy's hand moved to his hip. The gun came out, aimed straight at Jason's chest. Jason didn't flinch, didn't back away. He just locked eyes with Randy and gave him a slow, cold smile. A smile that said, "You just crossed the wrong man." Red Maple Grove thought it knew control, but they had no idea what real control looked like. Not until Jason showed them. Trouble wasn't when Karen taped another passive-aggressive note to our door. It wasn't even when she scribbled out a fine for having a green garden hose visible during a heat wave. Trouble came the day she showed up smiling, tape measure in hand, pretending to just check our mailbox. "Looks about half an inch too high," she chirped, measuring like she was prepping a crime scene. Sadly, Code 3.4 says that's a $50 violation. I stopped listening after that. The fines came faster than the junk mail. One for the hose, another for the aesthetic disharmony caused by Jason's pickup truck. Jason had barely been home a week, 4 tours overseas, special forces, seen things nobody should, and yet somehow, an HOA with a clipboard rattled him more than enemy lines ever did. The moment his F-250 rolled into our driveway, Karen circled like a shark. "It's too big," she declared, measuring tires against invisible lines. 2 inches past the parking boundary. Community guidelines don't allow overnight parking for trucks that size. Jason looked at her, calm as ever, and said, "You mean legally parked on our property?" Karen smiled wide, like a cat who'd caught a bird. "If your front tires even touch the curb, it's technically common property." She whipped out a fine, $170. Jason didn't argue. He just nodded once, slow, too slow. And right then, something in me tensed. Because Jason wasn't the kind of man who barked. He was the kind who waited. That's when Randy joined the parade, the part-time deputy, full-time walking lawsuit. He and Karen roamed the neighborhood side by side, armed with clipboards, cameras, and what looked like a laminated HOA Bible. They snapped photos. They wrote citations. They fined people for porch cushions, faded shutters, and mailbox hinges that didn't shine enough in the sunlight. Karen called it community beautification. We called it surveillance. Jason kept his head down. But every night I'd catch him at the kitchen table, laptop open, folders piling up. The spark that lit the bonfire came quietly. Jason hung a simple bird feeder from our old oak tree, something peaceful to watch over coffee in the mornings. Blue jays, cardinals, finches, nothing rebellious. Just life, just color. Karen hated it. Unauthorized wildlife attraction device, she barked, quoting code 6.8b like scripture. Jason pointed calmly to 3 other yards with feeders. You fining them too? Karen just smiled. They're on the list, she said sweetly. 3 days later, $300 fine in the mailbox. Jason didn't flinch. He didn't even frown. He simply said, okay. And when Jason says okay, it's never really okay. Then came the next move. Operation Pine Straw. Karen installed surveillance cameras. HOA property, she claimed. But all of them pointed one way. At us. Jason's answer? Pine straw mulch across the entire yard. HOA. Approved. Triple-checked. Karen exploded. Emergency board meeting. New rule. No natural mulch without prior written approval. Passed with no quorum, no witnesses, just her gavel pounding into the air. Jason appealed. Karen denied it. Jason appealed again. Karen fined us $500. I found Jason later, polishing a thick binder in the garage. A folder fatter than a Thanksgiving turkey. Just preparing, he said, eyes cold and certain. Sometimes it's not the loud man you should fear. It's the quiet one. The one who's been gathering evidence while everyone else was playing dictator. Red Maple Grove didn't feel like a neighborhood anymore. It felt like a pressure cooker. Trimmed lawns. Silent driveways. Neighbors peeking through blinds. Not from nosiness, but from fear. And Karen? She still thought her clipboard was the most powerful weapon in the subdivision. She had no idea what Jason was about to unleash. It wasn't enough for Karen to police bird feeders and mailbox heights. No. Once she ran out of excuses to fine us, she found a new target. Our dog, Max. A 12-year-old golden retriever with bad hips and a bigger fear of squirrels than thunderstorms. Gentle as a falling leaf. Yet according to Karen, Max posed a noise disruption threat because he barked, once, at a squirrel darting across the yard. Not at a neighbor, not at a child, at a squirrel. $200 fine. One more incident, Karen warned smugly, and animal control will be called. That was the first time in years I saw Jason clench his jaw. My son had been places where people didn't come back whole. Led missions that no one spoke about. He faced real danger. And yet it was this, petty, small-town tyranny, that made his hands shake. That night, Jason sat at the kitchen table surrounded by a mountain of papers. HOA codes printed, violations highlighted, and not ours. Karen's. Illegal pavers. Multiple trash bins. An unpermitted backyard shed she pretended didn't exist. But Jason didn't stop there. He went door to door. The silent neighbors, the ones who nodded quietly but said nothing for months, started opening up. Turns out Jason wasn't the only one keeping records. The Harts had audio recordings of Randy making suggestive comments during compliance checks. The Johnsons had video footage of Karen pulling up their decorative plants, the same plants she later fined them for neglecting. Even Mrs. Lennox, sweet and 84, had a folder filled with 27 vague citations. Jason gathered it all. Sorted, labeled, time-stamped. By the end of the week, he held a 48-page dossier thicker than a phone book. He didn't just sit on it. Jason took that folder straight to the county HOA oversight office, filed an official complaint, alleging abuse of authority, conflicts of interest, and potential civil rights violations. And Jason wasn't done yet. A week later, Karen held a so-called emergency HOA meeting at the clubhouse. No notice given. No agenda shared. Typical. But Jason showed up anyway, wearing his service uniform, not to threaten, but as a quiet reminder of who he was. He sat in the back, silent, letting Karen bluster at the podium about non-compliant residents and the need for tighter community control. Then, in the quiet that followed her rant, Jason raised his hand. "Madam President," he asked smoothly, "could you explain how HOA funds were used to install surveillance cameras pointed solely at my house? Without community vote? Without permits?" The room froze. Karen stammered, mentioning emergency powers. But Jason calmly held up a copy of the HOA's bank statement. Page 6, check number 4889. Community money. Unauthorized expense. Gasps whispered through the room. Muttered curses. She used our money? Someone hissed. Jason said nothing more. He didn't have to. Karen panicked. The next morning, Randy showed up with 2 uniformed officers, claiming they were there for community safety. They demanded Jason remove the flagpole we had proudly displayed for 8 years, now suddenly deemed a hazard. When Jason refused, Randy stepped forward, hand on his weapon. And then, just like that, he pulled it. No warning. No cause. Just pure rage wearing a badge. Karen stood smiling across the sidewalk like she'd already won. Jason didn't move. Didn't blink. "This is all being recorded," he said, voice calm. 3 different angles. Our doorbell camera. Jason's chest cam. And a neighbor's phone trained right on Randy. What Karen and Randy didn't know? Jason had filed for a restraining order 2 days earlier, and it had been granted that very morning. Meaning Randy, by stepping onto our lawn and drawing a weapon, had just broken a court order and committed assault, on camera, from 3 different sources. Within an hour, real county deputies, not Randy's buddies, were on their way. And for once, it wasn't Jason who had to defend himself. It was them. The real deputies arrived within the hour. But they weren't there for Jason. They came for Randy. Handcuffed right there on our front lawn, Randy's stunned face looked around for backup that wasn't coming. Karen tried blocking the view, shrieking that it was a setup, that Jason had trapped them. Nobody believed her anymore. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some stepping onto porches, and for the first time, clapped. Karen's beloved clipboard slipped from her fingers, hit the ground, and stayed there like a broken crown. Jason bent down, picked it up, flipped through the top page, and smiled. Karen had been signing her own paychecks, illegally, 3 times the allowed amount. We didn't even have to report it. The investigators saw it with their own eyes. Karen never imagined she'd lose. Tyrants like her, the ones who rule over lawns and mailboxes, don't plan for defeat. They plan to dominate. But even self-made HOA queens eventually answer to real law. And Jason was done playing nice. After Randy's arrest, you might think Karen would back off. Maybe hide. Maybe rethink everything. Not Karen. She doubled down. Sent a mass HOA newsletter titled, "Maintaining Order in Times of Disruption." Accused Jason of orchestrating a false flag attack. Hinted that we were threatening community safety with our unpatriotic actions. Unpatriotic. Karen had the nerve to accuse a Special Forces veteran, who fought through 4 combat tours, of disloyalty. But in her arrogance, Karen made a fatal mistake. She didn't just send that email to the neighborhood. She accidentally CC'd the entire county board, and Jason's new civil rights attorney. That's right. Jason had a lawyer now. Not just any lawyer. A pit bull who specialized in HOA abuse and unlawful surveillance. Turns out Karen's clipboard crusade wasn't just petty. It was criminal. Misuse of HOA funds, unauthorized surveillance equipment, falsifying board votes through rigged proxies. Jason and his lawyer compiled everything, every fake citation, every doctored budget, every trespassing photo. They subpoenaed HOA financial records and found gold. Karen had been quietly paying herself a management stipend for 3 years, over $18,000, unapproved and undeclared. Boom. When the county finally called a hearing, it was supposed to be private. Word got out anyway. Residents packed the library auditorium, folding chairs everywhere, people waving printouts of fines. One neighbor even brought a broken garden gnome as evidence. Jason sat calmly in the front row. Karen marched in like she was starring in some courtroom drama, wearing pearls, carrying 2 manila folders, and no lawyer. She still believed she could talk her way out of it. Big mistake. When Jason stood, the room turned electric. No yelling, no anger. Just calm, clear facts, laid out one after another. Timestamps, screenshots, videos of Randy shouting, Karen vandalizing Halloween decorations at 2 a.m., board meetings where Karen forged proxy votes. Gasps filled the room. Jason handed the panel a thick folder. Chronology of HOA abuse. Red Maple Grove, 2020 to 2024. Inside were emails, financial trails, audio clips, and a whistleblower letter from the treasurer Karen forced out 2 years earlier. The panel deliberated for 40 minutes. When they returned, they didn't soften the blow. Karen Mitchell, you are hereby removed from the Red Maple Grove HOA board effective immediately. Further investigations will proceed through the district attorney's office. Karen shot to her feet, furious. "You can't do this to me. I built this community." The room erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "You built it on lies." And Karen, for the first time since moving to Red Maple Grove, she had no clipboard to hide behind. Karen stormed out of that hearing like a tornado missing its target, clipboard dangling off her wrist, slipping onto the floor where no one bothered to pick it up. Even Muffin, her tiny schnauzer, barked once, as if celebrating freedom. Okay, maybe I imagined that part. But deep down, I know Muffin was with us. In the weeks that followed, Red Maple Grove transformed almost overnight. A temporary HOA board was appointed. Real neighbors this time. They begged Jason to join. He smiled politely and declined, saying he'd rather watch birds than police bird baths. The bylaws were rewritten from scratch. Gone were the ridiculous ornamental restrictions. Normal-sized trucks were allowed. Bird feeders reinstated. Decorative flamingos returned in full feathered glory. No HOA permission slip required. A full audit was launched into HOA finances. Formal charges for embezzlement and fraud were filed against Karen. Randy lost his badge, permanently. And us? We planted a second flagpole in the yard. This time, right next to the American flag, we raised a black and white POW MIA banner. A silent salute to sacrifices made, both seen and unseen. Karen tried to slink away, moving to another neighborhood. But her reputation chased her like a bad smell. Word spread fast. She now rents a tiny condo somewhere with no HOA. Imagine that. The clipboard queen exiled to a world without bylaws to weaponize. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. In Red Maple Grove, it came with a gavel, a court ruling, and a community newsletter titled, "Welcome Back, Sanity." You'd think that would be the end of Karen. You'd be wrong. 2 weeks after her removal, Karen fired her final shot, a defamation lawsuit against the entire neighborhood, claimed emotional distress, claimed reputation destruction, even claimed loss of future leadership opportunities, whatever that meant. She demanded $250,000 in damages. Said videos shared online were edited to vilify her, blamed Jason for orchestrating a smear campaign. This time, Karen wasn't facing one family. She faced everyone. The trial, Karen versus Common Sense, lasted 4 chaotic days. Day 1. Karen's lawyer argued she was the true victim of an online mob fueled by lies. Day 2. The HOA's lawyer, backed by 30 angry residents, presented evidence. Illegally signed checks, forged ballots, unauthorized cameras, misspent HOA funds, including $600 on presidential nameplates. And yes, the legendary bird feeder email surfaced again. Now an internet meme. Day 3. Jason took the stand. Calm. Collected. He spoke about serving overseas for freedom, and coming home to watch a neighbor weaponize paperwork to choke it away. "I didn't fight for this country," Jason said, "so someone with a clipboard could tell my mother what color garden hose she's allowed to use." The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge paused. Day 4. The judge dismissed Karen's case. With prejudice, meaning she couldn't file it again. Then came the best part. She was ordered to pay $18,400 in HOA legal fees. Every stolen dollar returned, with interest. Her bank account was frozen. Her condo lease canceled. Even her LinkedIn profile mysteriously vanished. Red Maple Grove wasn't just free. It was Karen-proofed. Karen may have lost her clipboard, but her legacy lived on. Mostly as memes. Last we heard, she's hiding out somewhere, far from HOA bylaws, hopefully still licking her wounds. A few weeks later, Jason and I took a slow walk around the block. No more angry notes. No more hidden cameras. Just the soft buzz of crickets and sprinklers tapping against fresh-cut grass. We passed the spot where Randy once pulled a gun on our son. Today, it's a lush herb garden, open for everyone. We waved at the hearts manning their grill. Mrs. Lennox rocked gently on her porch swing, a sleeping cat curled in her lap. Jason paused under the old oak tree, looked up at the bird feeder swaying gently in the breeze. "Strange," he said, voice low, "how peace can feel louder than all the chaos." I smiled, heart full, "Especially after you fight for it." Jason nodded, quiet and sure. "Let's make sure we never lose it again. Peace tastes sweeter after a long fight. No citations in the mailbox. No neighbors measuring grass with a ruler. Just life, messy, loud, free." But even in that golden hour, with everything looking so perfect, I couldn't help but think how close we came to losing it all. Not to violence, to apathy. Lesson 1. Never assume power will stay kind. Karen didn't snatch authority overnight. We gave it to her, by ignoring meetings, laughing off petty rules, assuming someone else would step up. It's just a mailbox height rule. Who cares? Karen cared, and that's how she turned lawn decorations into legislative weapons. The cure? Be present. Ask questions. Guard your community, even from clipboards. Lesson 2. Quiet persistence beats loud tyranny. Jason didn't rage. He didn't retaliate. He recorded. He documented. Photos, videos, dates, emails. Line by line, he built a case too heavy for Karen's lies to outrun. If you're facing a petty tyrant, don't match their noise. Beat them with proof. Lesson 3. It takes a village to break a dictator. Jason stood tall, but he didn't stand alone. The Harts, the Johnsons, Mrs. Lennox, neighbors who once whispered now found their voices. Tyrants thrive in silence. They crumble under unity. The lesson? Build real community before the storm hits. Share stories, exchange phone numbers, host barbecues. Because when neighbors link arms, clipboards lose power. Lesson 4. Justice may crawl, but it never stops. Some nights, it felt like Karen would never be held accountable. But Jason believed in two things: time and truth. And when they finally caught up to her, they hit like a wrecking ball. So if you're staring down your own HOA dictator today, remember, justice is slow, but it's relentless. And now, it's your turn. Drop your HOA horror stories in the comments. Tell us about your neighborhood battles, your outrageous fines, your own Karens. We read every single one. And maybe, just maybe, your story will be the next one we share. Because whether the battlefield is a desert halfway across the world, or a cul-de-sac with ornamental flamingos, freedom is always worth fighting for. And sometimes, the fiercest rebellion starts with a bird feeder swinging free in the breeze.